Hey, it's Lucky. Today is a very special day, because I actually finished the project. We don't usually do that around here. So I decided to participate in the week-long game jam from Brackies. And this video is all about the process of me starting the project, doing the project, compromising the project, and finishing the project. Like I said before, this is a week-long game jam. About 10,000 people joined the game jam, which is super impressive. I think about 1,500 people actually finished, but it's a very good score for a game jam actually. So congratulations to Brackies for hosting such a successful event. And now let's talk about my experience with the game jam. Before I got started, I had a couple things lined up. I really wanted to learn how to utilize groups in Godot. I never used them before and I know they're very powerful. So I wanted to build a game that utilizes this. I wanted to do something first person, because I always make my games first person. And I wanted to be quite a small project, because even though the game jam was a whole week, I only had 2 days off during the week on which I could work full time on the game, so it wasn't going to be a very big one. So on the first day the team was announced and it was the calm before the storm. And I spent the first day thinking about what I could make using this team. A lot of great ideas came to mind. The first idea I had was making a game which is literally about the calm before the storm. You were a sailor on a 16th century sailing vessel and you had to rope and bolt down all the equipment on the board before the storm hit, and your score would be based on how much equipment you could save. I still like this idea. I think it will be a fun mini game, but I think the idea was a little too on the nose with the team. And the next idea was the idea I went with, and it was a cleaning simulator actually. I was scrolling through my social media and I found this beautiful project by Michael Wolf. He's a photographer in Japan, and he did a year-long project on the public transport system in Japan and how full it is. And as I was looking through these photos, it really felt like a storm of people. And so I thought to myself, what would happen before this storm of people? And I could only imagine a lonely Japanese cleaning guy wiping the stations clean and cleaning all the trash before these huge amounts of people come in. So that's what I went with. I knew a cleaning simulator wouldn't be the most riveting gameplay in the jam, but I think it would be a nice break. I think a lot of people are going for very action-packed, intense gameplay, and I thought my game could be a nice contrast to that. Also, I just really wanted to make a cleaning simulator once. I think they're very satisfying. Gotta make all these little sound effects and interactions. So now that I had my idea laid down, it was off to start the project. So while day 1 was spent building the main menu, which I didn't end up using, that's always great. Day 2 was spent building out the main mechanics of the game. I knew I wanted 3 main cleaning mechanics: picking up trash, cleaning the floors, and cleaning objects. For this I wanted to create 3 different tools: the mop for cleaning the floors, the trash bag for picking up trash, and the spray and sponge for cleaning objects. I wasn't gonna spend too much time on visuals on day 2, I just wanted to get the core mechanics in code in there, so I could spend the rest of the days polishing up and beautifying the project. I imagine a lot of you understand how I did the logic for this game, but I'll run it down real quick. I'm using a first-person controller with a raycast pointing straight out of his face, and it's checking for collisions. The 3 collisions it can find are trash, moppables and cleanables. Then all the player needed to do is check what it was looking at and check if it had the appropriate tool for the job in its hand, and then remove the stain, remove the trash or clean up the objects accordingly. Before I used to use the has method call in Godot. It's a function where you can check if a certain object has a method, and that way I can check if it's trash or moppable or cleanable. But I've learned there's a better way now, and that's Godot groups. I wanted to learn about this feature and it came in really handy here. I can just check if the object is in a certain group, so whether it's trash, cleanable or moppable, and based on that I will call the appropriate function. Another added benefit of using groups is that I can really easily count all the nodes within a group. So I could keep track of how much trash there was left, how much cleanables there were left, and how much moppables there were left. I'm using this for a little to-do list so the player knows how far along he is in the game. Now that I had the main mechanics blocked out, it was time to start polishing. I started off with sound effects. I got all the sound effects for the game from Zapsplat. This is by far the best source for sound effects I know of. They got a giant library of high quality sound effects. And I spent about 1 hour looking through their library, finding the appropriate effects for my game. And I combined them all into this. And combined with the particle effects and animations, they give off the wanted effect. I really wanted this ASMR squeaky clean game. But there was one more thing I wanted to achieve with sound effects, and that's the feeling of morning. This game was set at the crack of dawn, and to achieve this I did two things. The main menu where you boot up, it's in a dark blue, and it has the ambient sound of night with a little cricket sound. And then once you boot into the game, it fades into a bright blue, and the ambient sound for the day pops up. I also added in some quiet royalty-free piano music to add to the vibe, and I'll quickly show you the intro to see what I mean by this effect. Now the last thing this game needed was the stage itself. This was going to take the most time in the project. I'm gonna model an entire station by hand. In hindsight, I should have just picked a station and modeled it after that, because most of the time modeling I was just doubting my decisions, and I would have been way faster if I just had a clear example and built a model based on that. But yeah, you always learn something during these jams. After these projects, I always like to take a moment to reflect back on the project. Just look back to see what went well and what didn't go so well, and what we've learned. What I wanted to achieve with this project was a small game that utilizes groups in Godot so I could learn about them. That worked out really well. I do feel comfortable using groups in Godot now, and for those who haven't used them before, let me break them down real quick. Groups solve the problem for me in Godot that I see a lot of people having. And it's finding nodes within your scene without actually having to use a giant global script that keeps track of players or objects, but instead just being able to pull them out of the hierarchy whenever you want from wherever you want. I see a lot of people using this global singleton that keeps track of, for example, a player or the enemies, and that every script calls in order to get the player object or enemy objects. Groups allow you to abandon this giant control script and just give every node access to the nodes it needs. Because even though they're called groups, they're not only meant for collections of objects. You can also have a group player, and any script can just access the group player, get the first node, and you'll have your player object. But they're also great for collections of objects. For example, if you have a group enemies and you want to find the closest enemy, it's very easy to just loop through every object in a group, find the distance from the player, and find the nearest enemy. And the last added benefit is identification. If you're looking at an object and you want to find out what kind of object it is, for example in my game when I want to differentiate between trash, moppables and cleanables, you can really easily check what group it is part of and see what kind of object it is. So yeah, groups is really one of those features that I wish I knew before. Like, they're very straightforward and they're a big part of Godot, and I just haven't had the chance to use them before. And now that I know, I will probably use them in every project. And finally, let's reflect on the things I didn't plan so well for this project, and it was definitely the environment. I really polished this main game mechanic, the picking up trash, moppables and cleanables. I really liked how that turned out, they're very satisfying. But the environment just doesn't match. The polishedness of the interactions really doesn't match with the low poly, simple environment. And I wish I did model after a station and just spent a bunch of time making this realistic station. Would have turned out way nicer. And that's the end of the project. I submitted it one day before the deadline of the jam. As the recording of this video, I have 3 ratings on it, and they all seem to be relatively nice. And they have about the same verdict that I gave the game myself. That it's a good looking game, that it's satisfying and relaxing, but that the gameplay isn't that riveting. So overall, I think the project was a success. It was a fun way to spend the weekend. If you want to play, I'll leave a link down in the description. And if you want to see more game dev and Godot content, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.